It was 1940 and Mr. Ned Shanaman had just finished high school and worked for Betsy Ross Potato Chips. Not many jobs were available, so Mr. Shanaman and his friend had decided that enlisting would be better off than being drafted into any field. When they enlisted, they wanted to be in the Marines.
And a buddy of mine, but neither one of us could pass the Marines, so we wanted to go somewhere, so we went next door to the Navy, and I passed the Navy, but my buddy had flat feet, so the Navy wouldn't take him.
Mr. Shanaman then decided to join the Navy, and his friend chose the Army. In November 1940, Mr. Shanaman left home for duty. He took tests so that the Navy knew what he was good at. His worst score was in mechanical aptitude, but that's where they placed him. He had to go to machinist school to learn in Dearborn, Michigan. The machinists went to the same school as 1st and 12th graders did. The children talked to them and would even try to take their hats from them. Without their hats on, they were considered as if they were out of uniform. They were at the school for about 3 months. Then they were sent to Newport, Rhode Island, to be assigned to their ships. Mr. Shanaman was officially assigned to the USS Medusa, a repair ship. The USS Medusa was stationed at Pearl Harbor. When he first got to Hawaii, it was like paradise. 3 days after Thanksgiving, the fleet was sent out on war maneuvers and weren't supposed to come back until a week before Christmas. The war maneuvers were called off early, and the USS Medusa had to go back to the port. It usually docked next to the USS Arizona, but they were called to fix the USS Enterprise, so they docked next to it instead. The USS Enterprise wasn't there yet, so they had to wait. This turned out to be one of the luckiest things.
Clock Liberty started, and I was in my whites waiting for Liberty to start at 8 o'clock. 5 minutes of 8, the general alarm goes off. We looked at each other. Somebody pushed the wrong button. Nobody moved. So they bring the button again and say, "Man your battle stations, men. This is no drill, this is war." And we looked at each other and said, what will they think of next to get us to go to battle station? And nobody moved. They ringed the alarm again, and shortly after that we heard a loud noise and a boom, and the ship rocked a little. We all moved then.
Mr. Shanaman went to his battle station, which was on the boat deck aft. It was the top high part of the ship at the back. He ran his way there. He couldn't believe his eyes.
I couldn't believe all the planes that were flying around. And they flew that low, because nobody was shooting back at them, that you could see the pilots smile at you when they went past.
They even tried shooting him, so he lay down. When he got up, though, he was directly in between the bullet holes in the planks. He thought about hiding, but there were consequences for abandoning battle stations. From the top deck, he could see most of the damage. The USS Medusa was really lucky. The Japanese went mainly for the battleships and cruisers. The crew could see most, and just about all, of the sinking ships. The USS Arizona was a big hit, and if they had been anchored next to it, they would have gone down as well. Then an officer came to Mr. Shanaman then. He asked, "What is your battle station?" Mr. Shanaman simply answered, "Look out, sir. If they can't see them now, they're blind." "I agree with you, sir." The ammunition hoist broke down. Go down to the magazine and help carry up ammunition to the 3-inch gun. The magazine was the lowest deck of the ship. Mr. Shanaman was glad to move and ran down 5 decks. While he was waiting, he heard the loudspeaker again. "Submarine, dead astern." He wanted to be topside then. So he grabbed the gun shell and ran up there. Right on the USS Medusa's fantail was a 2-man submarine. They shot them right through the conning tower, where the periscope is controlled, and were sunk. The battle went on for nearly 2 hours. The Japanese dropped bombs and torpedoes. The USS Medusa was one of the lucky ships that didn't get any major damage, but for weeks the crew tried repairing other ships. It was heartbreaking to see how many souls were lost.
Through the entire war, Mr. Shanaman wrote letters through email. He wrote to family, but he mainly wrote to Clarabelle. She wanted to write letters to his soldiers, so his friend gave Clarabelle's friend Mr. Shanaman's name, but not where he was from. She talked about Pennsylvania, but Mr. Shanaman wrote back saying that he was from there too, and that their schools were rivals in baseball. He wrote for 3.5 years until he saw her for the first time. He had to write really small though, because he had a very limited amount of writing space. When he got back home, they met and she wanted to get married, but Mr. Shanaman didn't want to when he was officially done with the service. After Pearl Harbor, he was part of the USS Wheaton crew. They traveled everywhere. On the way to Okinawa, Japan, they got into a really big typhoon. They were going 10 knots ahead, but when it ended, they were 20 miles behind from where they started. Mr. Shanaman was half steering in the back. It was like an elevator ride up and down because the waves were so rough. Also, every hour he had to go all the way down to the shaft alley and oil the bearings. It took a while to get down there, and it wasn't as rocky as on the top deck. It was nice until he would have to go back on top going around again. All he could see was water. At New Guinea, they got into a horrible thunderstorm at night. They all had to get off the top deck because of the lightning. In the morning, the captain steered the ship between some buoys. Apparently the buoys moved because of the storm, and the ship went full speed ahead. They heard a screech and a scrunch, which meant that the ship had run aground on a coral reef. They sat on the reef for 2 days until a tug got them and pulled them off. Also, when a ship runs aground, it has to go to the nearest dry dock it can, and as soon as possible. The only one close to them was Sydney.
When we pulled into Sydney, we looked up on the bank there, and there were girls up there waving. We thought they were waving at us, and finally one of the signalmen said, "Hey, that's semaphore." You know, that's the signalman could send messages that way. And the one of them looked, and here they had, "Meet me at the Trocadero."
They wondered what Trocadero could possibly be, so they asked some young kids. They told them that it was a movie theater with a dance band with a revolving stage. It was open all day and night.
While I was sitting there, a guy sat down alongside of me. We were talking there for a while, and all at once he looks at me. He said, "Are you from Lancaster, Pennsylvania?" You know, I look at him. I'm sitting in Australia, and he asked if I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I looked at him. He said, "I'm a preacher, and I preached in Lancaster County." And he said, "That Dutch accent I'll know anywhere."
When they were at Sasebo, Japan, they were one of the first Americans the civilians had seen. The citizens were told that the Americans would harm them, but they proved them wrong. Even though they could hardly understand each other, they communicated through a type of sign language. They gained trust from the children by giving them chocolate, and slowly everyone began trusting them, including the men. Mr. Shanaman was discharged on November 12, 1946. When he was finally done with his service, he went back home. Everyone had changed, but so had Mr. Shanaman. They were relatively the same people, though. Plus, this time, Mr. Shanaman could marry Clarabelle. He got married on November 24, 1946. We would like to thank Mr. Shanaman for his duty in the U.S. Navy and being a part of history.